it's Pokemon John here. Unsinkable until one night. George Calder must be the luckiest kid alive. He and his little sister Phoebe are sailing with their aunt to the Titanic, the greatest ship ever built. George can't resist exploring every inch of the incredible boat, even if it keeps getting him into trouble. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Of course, it's the sinking of the Titanic of 1912. The Titanic was sailing to the place when George was living and to meet his papa, but in the way, George is a fictional character, but the Titanic was real. The sinking was actually really real. And when on the way though, they hit an iceberg, and the designer, he said no, nothing, the Titanic is invincible. Nothing can break it, nothing can impenetrate it, nothing can destroy the Titanic. It's the best ship ever built, the greatest one. And well, the impossible happens. Everybody said, oh, you must be a lucky kid, George, you're going on the Titanic. But then George will be stranded on the Titanic, the sinking ship. And how will he survive this? Well, today I have one part to share with you. It was about teamwork because Marco, who was Enzo's dad, they are all Italian immigrants, and they become really good friends with George and Aunt Daisy and Phoebe. Aunt Daisy is George's aunt, and Phoebe is George's sister. And Marco is stranded on the ship too because they said only women and children on the lifeboats, because women and children are more priority than men. The men will all be on the ship when it sinks. There are thousands of men here on the sinking ship, and that's George on the lifeboat. In this story, first Marco saved George by jumping off the ship, and he found a wooden plank and put George there. But then Marco went on a coma, and George helped him on the lifeboat, and to a Cathophia, the huge ship passing by, and they all got saved. That time it was really emotional because Enzo was Marco's son, and Marco just whispered something in Enzo's ear and told Aunt Daisy that he was going on a special boat ride because Enzo was only 2 years old, and he tried to keep Enzo smiling and happy. And he said to Enzo never to leave Aunt Daisy because Marco knew he was gonna die anyway because he can't get on the lifeboats because the designer didn't think that just an iceberg would penetrate the invincible Titanic's hull. So the lifeboat supply was not abundant. It was very scarce. In some parts, there's a drought, water is scarce. It's kind of like that. And now George. This is when Enzo showed George that the ship was flowing with water. And now George understood what Enzo was saying. Sea, the sea. The Titanic was filling with water from the sea. And George thought Enzo was saying sea, in the look, the perspective, sea. And Chapter 11, Unsinkable. Unsinkable. George whispered those words like a prayer over and over his mind. He thought of Mr. Andrews, of how sure he was of this ship. That's the designer, Mr. Andrews. He was real. Mr. Andrews was real. But the longer he stared at the water, that foaming green water, rising higher every second, the more certain he became the Titanic was in trouble. We must go up, Marco said to Aunt Daisy. We will find a way. But she shook her head, holding up Phoebe's bright blue coat and her life jacket. My niece Phoebe, Aunt Daisy said. She's down there. George could see she was fighting back tears. George had never seen her look so sad and helpless. Not even when Uncle Cliff died. Uncle Cliff was Aunt Daisy's husband, FYI. She came down here looking for me, George said. "We can't find her." Marco's amber eyes became very intent. "An idea," he said. He knelt down and spoke to Enzo in Italian. The boy smiled and nodded. Then Marco hoisted the little boy up onto his shoulders. Enzo took a huge breath and, oh yeah, by the way, Enzo has a really, really loud and explosive lungs. I don't know how a 2-year-old can have that volume. Enzo took a huge breath and screamed, "Fiyobi! Fiyobi!" People stopped talking and stared at the boy with the foghorn voice. "Fiyobi! Fiyobi!" As a hush fell over the crowd, George heard a faint voice. "I'm here! I'm here!" The crowd parted and Fiyobi appeared, her spectacles crooked, her face pale. "What was that?" Fiyobi gasped, digging her fingers into George's arms. Nobody answered, but they all knew the Titanic was sinking. The impossible. Everybody believed. Titanic never sinks. It will never, ever, impossible. It's impossible that it will ever sink. And then here's the impossible. "We will go up," Marco said. "How?" Aunt Daisy said. Fiyobi grabbed George's hand. "You, Georgie," she said. "What?" George said. "Fiyobi's right," Aunt Daisy said. "You know the ship better than anyone." She turned to Marco. "He's explored every inch." George couldn't believe it. They were counting on him? But what if he made a mistake? What if they all got lost? "You can do it," Fiyobi whispered. And so George closed his eyes, picturing Miss Andrews' blueprints in his mind. Then he remembered the escape ladders. He remembered what Mr. Andrews had told him. The ladders are in the stoker's quarters, and they run up 3 decks. He pointed towards the front of the ship. "This way," he said. And they said, now it was George's turn. It was their turn to get into the lifeboat so they could, run away. Now it was George's turn. As he took a step over the railing, someone pulled him back roughly. No more room," the officer said. "Women and children only. Lower away," he called. "No," called Aunt Daisy, standing up on the boat. "He's only 10 years old. Wait." The life rocked and almost tipped over. Ladies shrieked, "You drowned us all!" A woman shouted, "Sit down or I'll throw you over," the sailor said. And now Fiyobi was screaming too. Enzo howled. George was too shocked to move. Fiyobi leaped up and grabbed hold of one of the ropes. He was trying to climb out of the lifeboat back to George. He grasped as her hand slipped and he dangled over the sea. A sailor grabbed her around the waist and threw her into the boat. Then the boat slid down its ropes and splashed into the water. Aunt Daisy and Fiyobi were shouting up at him as sailors rowed the boat away. George stood there at the rail, watching, his entire body shaking. Strong arms lifted George up. He felt himself being carried. "Papa?" he said. "Papa?" Because he was going to see his papa and he thought, wait, this is a dream, right? Because I was actually really hopeful then and say, oh really? He survived. I hope he didn't, die when he bonked his head on the rail and passed out. And I hope that he didn't die or slip into the sea or, drown or something. And I was really hopeful. He said, strong arms lifted George up. He felt himself being carried. "Papa," he said, "Papa, why did your head hurt so much? Had the panther knocked him down out of the tree? Was he sick with a fever like Mama?" And whose voice was whispering in his ear, "Giorgio, Giorgio, wake up." George opened his eyes. Marco's amber eyes shone down on him. So this is when Marco returns the gift to George. He saved George's life when George saved all of their lives by knowing they had the escape ladders on the stoker's quarters. So I thought of the moral, treat others what you want to be treated. There was not the moral story, but it's the exact moral. George wanted to treat others fairly, and he wanted to save them, and then the others, Marco, saved him in return. This was no dream. He was not sick. The Titanic was sinking. It's time to go, Marco said. Go where? George said, even though he knew. They were going into the water. There was nowhere else for them to go. Marco held George's arm up as he climbed over the railing. When we jump as far out as you can, Marco said, away from the ship. George filled his lungs with the icy air. Jump! Marco cried. George pushed his feet and leaped off the boat. He closed his eyes, imagining he had enormous wings that he would take him soaring into the sky. That was a part I wanted to share with you. You know, it was a long part. I know I skipped a lot of things, but I jumped to the main points I wanted to share with you. How I just said the moral, how I want to treat others to be treated fairly, and when others treat you, they will treat you fairly. And it's like, even though you have trouble, George explored every corner of the ship. Like every inch, every centimeter, every detail of the ship. He even met Mr. Andrews, who showed him the ship blueprint, and he knew the escape ladders, blah blah. And even though it got him into so much trouble with Aunt Daisy, but this time they were counting on him to get his experience from the trouble, experience for exploring the ship, to leave them somewhere safe. Not like others, they only live in their cabins. Like, ooh, I sleep and then I eat, I play. You know, I just relax and sleep again. He explored every inch. He got up at like 12 a.m. in the midnight, or 1 a.m., 5 a.m., and then he just explored the ship and just pretend to go to sleep when someone thinks, oh, is George out again? George did a lot of exploring when he was not supposed to, but actually it might save you or help you become what your dream job or something. So I would recommend you do that thing on the right time, but it was also like George's experiences from the ship saved all of their lives, even though George and Marco jumped over the ship into water and Marco had passed out. But it was, you know, later than never. So it would be like farther or like you drown. Okay, this is the end of our book review today. I know this is only one book and it's like a 14-minute video. So thank you for watching and see you next time.